All right. Okay, we're ready to go. Everybody good? Got notes out?
Yep. Think so.
All right. Welcome to the SnoWest Show. I'm Ryan Harris, SnoWest publisher. We've been doing SnoWest we are in our 50th year.
Really?
Did you guys know that? Yeah. January 2024 will be the 50th year of SnoWest.
So we're going to Cancun.
I remember that because I was born in 74.
You're going to Cancun because you're a farmer.
That's true.
That's all you do. Every time I open Facebook, Bruce is in Cancun again. That stuff grows on its own, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, 50 years. We've been doing SnoWest magazine. Started here, actually, in this building. Well, it started in the basement of a house about a mile west of here, and then moved into this building. Went just a magazine until 99, 2000. Then we added the forums, first step into digital, and those really took off pretty well. And now the magazine is just like a small slice of the pie of what SnoWest does. Obviously, we do the podcast. We've been doing the podcast for over a year now. We've got a YouTube channel. We do a lot of content on there. Still do the magazine. Still do 7 issues a year. Go to snowwest.com and subscribe. There's still a lot of good information. I know you guys have been working on your test rider feedback for the upcoming season on all the 2024s that we rode.
Yeah, we've been getting that stuff into them so they can write up whatever we said, I guess.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's good.
Should be a good review on Cardi B and all that
stuff.
Should
be a good reviews. It was fun.
Yeah, so make sure you subscribe to SnoWest. Go to snowwest.com, get your magazine subscription so you can get all of the test rider feedback. That's pretty much the only spot, aside from these podcasts, where you're going to get that firsthand experience on all the 2024s. And this is purely just mountain riding. We are based in the West. We live in the West. We ride in the West. We do all of our testing out here. Been doing it for 50 years, long run. Also, go to snowwest.com. Check out our merchandise. We just got a new line in. It's the OG line. We have hoodies, T-shirts, and hats. It's all this cool new logo, kind of the logo that you're used to seeing, that circle logo. Anyway, it's the SnoWest OG line. Go to snowwest.com. Check out the new merch there. And this episode we've got lined up. This started back in late March with a ride in Island Park.
Yep.
With the Ibex crew. So you guys built 2 turbo systems, and this was kind of the prototype stage and development stage. So you brought up 2 turbo catalysts, and we rode those. Justin and I rode those, and now we're here in June, so a couple months later, you guys have done a lot more riding and a lot more testing and tuning and refining, and now we're here to kind of talk about riding that. Let me introduce real quick before we jump into that stuff. Justin Stevens here to my right, SnoWest test rider for several years, former marketing director at Motorfist, brand ambassador. You guys manage the athletes, worked with Robin and Dave, really close, and all the other Motorfist guys. Even worked with this guy, Bruce Kerbs, also been SnoWest test rider for several years. Former Motorfist ambassador.
Yep.
Now what do you wear? You got 2B gear, right?
Yeah. Kind of rolling into 2B.
Switched you over to 2B?
Yeah.
How do you like that?
I've been liking it. It seems pretty good quality and fit and finish is good. So
yeah, it's got a good fit. Yeah, the days of when Motorfist, you had Motorfist like right on the cusp of just exploding. Like it was big and it was taking market share and it was like making waves.
Yeah.
And then when they sold the Cat, it just like took all the wind out of the sails.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I don't know. I don't know if it's something that happened after that or just the way the market changed. I know there's some market factors that were occurring up in Canada and other places that I think played into that too. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. So.
Yeah, a lot of behind the scenes stuff that just never really gets talked about, unfortunately. But,
yeah.
God, we've got a lot of other podcasts that we've got to start working on here in a couple months from all the 2024s that we rode at Snowshoot.
Right.
And we start riding the sleds in December and January, and are off and on them for quite a bit. You rode the Catalyst with us early January. That was our first experience on the Catalyst. Cool sled. And then we got a lot more seat time on it. And then we go to Snowshoot and we can ride it compared to everything else.
Yeah.
And man, the snow was phenomenal.
It was.
Yeah, like so flipping deep.
It was awesome.
Like it felt like mini Canada down here. Oh, and then shout out to Frederick Desjardins, who risked life and limb running off into the darkness in the blizzard of 23.
That's right. I
Over
forgot
West
about
Yellowstone.
that.
was fun.
Trying to get back to the cabin when the roads are closed. So.
Jeans and tennis shoes.
They were
Yep.
so nice. They really went
Yeah, Fred
over and above.
Fred saved our bacon. We got snowed in West Yellowstone, and it's a 20-mile drive back to where we stay in Island Park. But they shut the roads as soon as the wind blows.
Yeah.
And honestly, it when we started dinner in West Yellowstone, like it snowed almost a foot,
Yeah.
and it was blowing like crazy. So they had a good reason to shut the road. But
Yeah.
Skidoo, man, they made it happen. They got us some sleds. We rode some race sleds, some free ride.
Yeah.
What do they call them? The hill climb.
Yeah.
Hill climb race edition.
Yeah, I think it was a race edition.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Set us up on those, and so we hopped on those. Borrowed some gear that didn't fit. Rhett,
Rode in our
Rhett had
shoes, our tennis shoes, and
yeah,
didn't you have your tennis shoes on?
I had my tennis shoes on. Rhett wore that visorless helmet
Yeah.
that Mason Rutledge crashed in and busted the visor off earlier
Yeah.
in the day.
That's awesome.
And tinted goggles and riding home in the dark in a blizzard just right down the highway.
Yeah, that was fun.
Anyway, that was fun. All right, and then over here we have the crew from Ibex. Ibex has been around for how long?
End of 2016.
Okay, so you're coming up on. I'm not really good at math. I'm kind of a word guy.
It's like
It's like 7-8 years, yeah. So Michael Clausen, what was your role in Ibex? And so Will, you guys run the company now, and then Michael is helping. How does that work?
Yeah, William and I started the company in 16. William had a fantastic idea to do clutching differently than everybody else. That's kind of our niche, I would say, is that we come in and go, how can we do this differently? Clutching had been, a 10 series profile, for instance, is what a lot of people use. Great profile, works great, but it was developed, in the 70s, 80s with 80, 90 horse sleds, and now we're running, what's Ski-Doo and Polaris are pushing 180 horse plus, and then you go and tune it, you're 220, pretty easy, and it's the same profile. So William came in and said, it's just geometry is how it works. And my math skills are about as good as my daughter, who's 20 months old. So William had to do all the engineering behind it. And so in 2016, we got an idea to try and start a company doing it. Dad didn't have much to do with it until about a year and a half ago to help us with the marketing side of stuff. We've got obviously fantastic products. We're putting more power to the ground than any other company. We have showed a lot of people about life, more power to the ground, all that stuff. I mean, we don't necessarily on the clutching side. The way I explain it is we don't create horsepower. We just make the transmission more efficient, which is, if you got 1 million horsepower and can't put it to the ground, there's no use in you having it. So we put it more efficiently to the ground. So Dad came in to help us, try and push it out there and help people understand exactly what we're doing and why we do it. So
Right. Okay. Then that's the voice of Alex Clausen. You are. What's your role at Ibex?
mostly operations, day-to-day activity, tech support, marketing, and sales is more my role.
Okay. And then we have William Clausen. Am I saying it right? Clausen.
Yep. Clausen.
Clausen. All right. And you're more the engineering side of things.
Yeah, I take care of most of the CAD drawings and the tuning when we start getting into that. A lot of the original fit and finish. Alex comes in and goes, "Hey, that's ugly," and have to change it. But that's my primary focus is engineering.
And this all started just clutching, like built their own clutching and on snowmobiles primarily, or into UTVs as well.
Started in snowmobiles, moved to UTVs very quickly.
So which segment works better? Like where do you sell more product?
That's a good question. It just depends.
Pretty even.
In clutching, they sell quite a bit more product in the UTV world because it's so much larger of market.
But we do sell a lot of ice scratchers.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys killed it on the ice scratchers, that's for sure. Okay, and then Michael Clausen. So you go back to Bully Dog.
Yes.
So when did you start Bully Dog Technologies?
We started Bully Dog Technologies late 1998 and sold the company. My brothers and I sold the company in 2014. And then we started a plastic printing machine shop. So we make a lot of Ibex's parts, help finish designing of the parts and that sort of thing. And then now one of my nephews is starting to run that, so that's how I've gotten to more time to spend over at Ibex to help them out to get the message out. As I was probably the one that contacted you, Ryan. So
Yeah.
that's where I came in.
Yeah. We go back a ways on the diesel stuff.
Yeah.
You know, we did Diesel Tech Magazine. We started in 2007, and so it was a bad time to jump in because that was right when the EPA like really came in and put the first hammer down, and DPFs came out, and trucks ran like crap for the next couple of years. Like getting a new truck, if you got stuck with an 07, 08, 09, anything, any brand, it was a bad era.
Yep.
But you guys, that's where Bully Dog and other companies were really good at cleaning that stuff up and making it run. But that lasted just a short window.
Yep. And then kind of started on Ashton Hill with Diesel Tech.
Yeah. Yep.
Pulling a snowmobile trailer with a Dodge diesel.
If you started in '98, you were doing stuff for like a '98 12 valve common rail? P pump.
The P pump. We started with in the Dodge stuff. We started with the Dodge P pump. With Ford, it was the 7.3 Power Stroke when Power Strokes came out, doing chips and stuff with them, and then all of our Chevy stuff started in 2001 when they came out with the Duramax.
So what truck engine was the best seller for product?
There we go. It's going to be good.
For fully
way to
knocked
say
out.
Well, we started with Dodge, so that was our biggest for a while. Then we came in and proved that we could tune a 7.3. We went to some competitions and won with the 7.3, and then our chip took off, and of course the Ford market was substantially bigger, and so that became
Just a minute. He's not
probably
to the
stayed
yet.
probably stayed our largest seller was the Ford stuff, largely because Ford sold more vehicles. But then when Chevy came out with the Duramax and the Allison to begin with was pretty weak. Mm-hmm. And we were the first ones to take the Allison transmission in 2001. We took it apart, had never done an automatic before, but nobody else was doing it, and we had to have the thing hold the horsepower. So we took and put extra clutches in every single gear and got it to hold probably close to 200 horse more than it would factory. And that kind of put us on the map then, so that now we could start building more horsepower than anyone else.
So sticking with that era, like 2001 Duramax with the Allison, and you're adding 200 horse to it, what did that bring the total horsepower up to? 450?
Talking engine? You talking engine?
Well, like
horsepower?
dyno horsepower.
Dyno, man, I can't remember. You guys probably know better than me.
I think that one was around 380 horse to the ground, probably 380 to 400.
What's your Duramax now, Justin?
I think they're
Fresh off the lot.
485.
Yeah, about 500.
Yeah. So they'll dyno like a wheel dyno. They'd dyno probably about 400 horse.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, it's not at the wheels, but
Still a Chevy though.
So now the pickups that they're coming out with are every bit of what we made out of them back in the day, especially the 7.3s. Man, we really thought we had something when we got to 200.
Yeah.
200 wheel horsepower, which was really nice, but now it's a little different story.
Well, and getting those old 98, 5.9 Cummins up to 200 or over 200 was something.
So we were the first one to take a Cummins P pump.
VP44.
VP44, actually. Yeah, that's right. We took a VP44 Cummins to 640 horse with propane and nitrous.
I remember that. Oh, geez.
Down in Las Vegas. The closest vehicle to us was 400 horse. So that was a fun day.
Yeah, and I don't know what happened out in Indianapolis this year, but last year at the big diesel event out there, I mean, they're dynoing over 3,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was.
I mean,
it was.
sheesh.
3,200 again?
3,200.
Isn't that crazy? Crazy how far that's come in a couple years. Well, 20
couple years.
20 years, but feels like a couple years.
Yeah, it was only a couple years.
Zeros
it makes me
don't
feel
count, right?
Yeah. Geez. Yeah, but the way those I can't believe how the motors are holding together. Now, granted, people used to drive the truck to the dyno event back in the 90s and early 2000s. now it's concrete filled, like it's purely just a dyno truck, one run and done, and they rebuild the whole thing if it doesn't blow up.
Yeah.
You know, it's a different ball game, but the numbers they're doing is insane. I can't believe it.
Yeah. One of the guys that worked at Bully Dog, I follow him pretty closely. He's still in it, and he goes to that event every year, and it's nuts, the kind of stuff he posts, and the trucks are $200,000, $250,000 in them. Just crazy.
Well, and a 6.4 liter Ford kicked everybody's butt on the sled pull.
Yep.
That blows my mind. Like
Why?
how did you get that thing to hold together?
A 6.4?
Yeah.
I put stock bottom end. I put 1,000 horsepower to the ground on that 6.4 motor.
What all do you have to do to get there, though?
I did an injection pump, head studs, and injectors, and a big shot of nitrous. It was a stock transmission, stock bottom end, stock turbos, everything. I ran 598 horse or 597 horse on fuel, and Bully Dog at that point was just coming out with this nitrous system that was totally electronic. So all I had to do was set it up, and I set it up at 15 pounds of boost. It would kick on stage 1. At 25 pounds of boost, it would kick on stage 2. And that was a cool day, too. And it drove off the dyno, too.
Did it really?
Yeah. Didn't last much longer after
I was going to say, did it drive home? Because
it drove off the dyno. We're going to stop it. It drove off the dyno.
Go put it in the trailer.
Oh, man. Well, yeah, the diesel days. Were you raising your hand, Bruce? Like
No,
Farmer Bob over here? Going, hey,
just excited, you know?
Ford guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
I drive a Ford, too. That's what he was
right.
saying. He's just trying to make sure everybody
I
knew.
had the
What?
good old 6 liter.
You had a 6 liter, right? Yeah.
Thing ran pretty good.
And if you built that, like if you took
Yeah,
it apart and
bulletproofed them.
rebuilt it, like bulletproofed it, those were phenomenal.
Yeah,
Still are. In fact, those are going for good money.
They still sound the best out of any.
I agree.
They are pretty cool, yeah.
Their whistle they have is just phenomenal.
Yep.
Nothing like a chilly morning and getting a 6.0 to start.
Yep. They cranked for 15 minutes. They still have the best starter on the market, I'm pretty sure. You know, cranking that long, you got to have a pretty good starter.
Can you imagine if they had push button start back? Like, just hit the button and then 20
Go back
seconds
to the-
later you're like, are we
Go
going
back-
anywhere?
Go back inside, get your coffee, come back, and it'll start.
Oh, geez. All right. Well, let's talk about snowmobiles like that. We're still in this for snowmobiling. So when we rode the Catalyst, so Bruce,
Yes.
you're a Polaris certified mechanic.
There's a lot of
That's a
them.
long time ago.
You are an Arctic Cat lifer. Like if I've ever seen one. So far.
Yeah. Hopefully they keep rolling because, if they don't, then
I mean, it's
the
been
lifer
fun to
might
watch.
end.
You've been on this emotional roller coaster, like watching things go up and down.
Yep.
And like you've been pretty depressed for the last couple of
I'm
years.
on a lot of different roller coasters like that. But anyway, go
Probably
back
on
to
a lot of
We'll
probably
stick to
on
the
a lot of
snowmobile one.
medication. Well, you're on a 6.0. You're a
You're a
cat
farmer.
guy.
6-0.
I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
When you got on the Catalyst, like what was your first impression?
Excited. It's about time. A few other words, but no, it was, I was happy. Like it was exciting to have something under you that felt fun to ride.
What did it feel like? Like you've been on an Ascender since they've come out.
It just felt light and like a race sled. And I don't race, but you know what I mean? It just felt like a nimble sled that you can go do about anything you want on it. So, of course, you can feel the lack of horsepower a little bit, but for 600, it was impressive.
Okay, so now imagine that sled with enough horsepower to go anywhere the 850s go,
Oh,
plus a little.
all day long. Just smiles all day long.
Yeah. So while everybody else is waiting around for the bigger motor to come out, which is hopefully coming this year,
Hopefully.
these guys have got a turbo.
Yeah.
And so we rode that. Riley's. So you had 2 setups when we rode. Are you still doing a 2 setup system?
Not 2 setups, but obviously there will be
Boost levels.
boost
Yeah,
level
you can do different
differences, but-
things, but you just have one kit.
Yeah, I mean, after talking to a lot of different people, you guys included on that, we took the advice and was like, you know what, we'll just do it simple, and you have one kit that's the best. So that's just
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. And man, Riley's. So we rode Riley's race sled after Jackson.
right.
Nethercott, Jason Nethercott worked with you guys a little bit on that. Following Jackson,
Yeah, so in Jackson, he was set up the way the other sled was, which is why there was the problems that we had with it. But when we did it with you, yeah, nether caught. We've been doing the injector, moving the injectors. That's the main difference between the two, is the injectors being moved. And so we move the injectors, and that's kind of what makes it. You get more bottom end. It's easier to tune. It's more. It's the broad scope of everything. It just works a lot better. So we were toying with that idea. Kind of talked to you guys about it. You guys were like, "Look, if you're gonna sell something, just sell something that works, right?" And that's kind of what we were looking for, is to toy with both of them. And so when you guys rode Riley's, that's the setup that we now have, which I don't know if Riley's had the bigger injectors in it, but we are doing a bigger injector setup. You are limited on the 600 injectors, especially if you go down.
Yeah, I think that was the difference between the two, right? When we were talking on the mountain, was Riley's had the injector.
Because he had his boost turned up, so I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yeah. So Riley's injectors are moved from the back of the cylinder to the front.
Okay.
And then it had the bigger injectors as well. So there's two main differences there.
So maybe it didn't have the big. Maybe I'm thinking of just relocated.
I think it was just the location. I don't think it had the bigger injectors. It just was.
I think it was because we were running 9 pounds, and you can't, at that elevation, you can't run 9 pounds on the stock injectors, which we.
So go back to like day one, like when did you guys have this idea of like, we're going to be the first turbo catalyst out there?
Oh, great. Day one, that was more than 15 minutes ago. I don't know if I can remember that far. We were approached. We worked with one of the cat guys pretty closely on big bores with Black Diamond Extreme, tuning those and stuff. And so he wanted us to help him build a turbo kit for the hill climbs. Yeah, the race team, the hill climb series. So at that point, we started on an 800 catalyst that they had dropped a motor into, and that was the first one that we built on a very prototype chassis. Everything is pretty much changed, so that first turbo kit we built wouldn't fit in the production chassis.
Good practice.
We didn't actually get our hands on a 600 until February, and there we got a motor. We got a chassis and a motor with about 5,500 miles on it. So, we've been around the Catalyst for quite a while, but there was, this obviously, they're very proud of the Catalyst. It's a very good, completely redesigned chassis. In my opinion, if you take any of the other manufacturers, they haven't redesigned a chassis since 2011. There's different plastics,
right,
tiny different geometry changes. This is the full, from the ground up kind of chassis. So they were keeping it very close, obviously. And yeah, we were basically a couple of, and those ones were still, even the ones you rode, obviously Riley's, and the one that we got it's still not production style stuff. There's obviously, you guys saw the side panel differences between the two.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got a couple that kind of fell off the back of the trailer and had a lot of miles on them, which is fine.
All of these guys in the West and all these ladies that bought this Catalyst 600 and they sold out in a couple hours.
Yeah.
Have this option, and they knew going into spring orders that there was a turbo system in the works already.
Yep.
So that if they bought this sled, there's something coming that's going to be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it almost seems like Cat should pat you on the back just a little bit, because realistically, the 600 runs amazing. It's an awesome sled stock. It's fun, but for a lot of guys, that's just not enough. So your option then is to either buy a 600, wait a year, hold on to your Ascender, or jump brands. So they had to pat you on the back for helping keep people.
Well, it's definitely a thing. To have early access to something is obviously big.
That's awesome.
Anyway too. So it's definitely from both sides. We obviously appreciate it. It's the first time. It's a lot more work than we thought it was going to be. It's a lot more stress than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I should have wore a hat, because if you're going to put this on YouTube, they can see not much hair here.
So what could possibly be stressful about this?
Oh, nothing really. You're only working with, going from prototypes to production. It's pretty, we used to think that the prototype part was the hard part, and the prototype is pretty easy. It's mass producing something that's going to work,
Consistency, reliability, efficiency,
the
customer has an expectation. We want to meet and exceed that.
We've been around. I can't imagine, what Ski-Doo and Polaris do as well, but I mean, you see what these cat engineers are putting the sled through. I mean, it's amazing that they have any problems, but a customer will always find the breaking point of something. But the kind of stuff they put it through. So that's the thing is trying to at least keep up with the quality that every manufacturer has, and then it's trying to make something that's cost effective, that's reliable. And then the other big stressful part for me is the consistency of the tune on a two-stroke. I mean, to watch Ski-Doo, Polaris, and Arctic Cat develop these things that run as flawless as they do, I know each one of them have their issues, but it's a lot of tuning. I mean, we've got, on the Ascender chassis, when we were tuning that with the big bores and stuff, I mean, we probably had over $200,000 in time just tuning them, to watch something like that. That's the biggest thing, is trying to make it run. We expect a lot out of it. When I get on a sled, I want to make sure it runs, and so that's trying to make that happen for our customers is the number one priority in our mind.
So Will, or should I say not Bill?
There's a fire up.
You knew it was coming, didn't you?
So from an engineering standpoint, like how do you? So Arctic Cat gives you this turbo, or gives you this catalyst, a couple pre-production prototypes that are pretty loose and worn out and stretched. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna put a turbo in there. How do you know like how big of a turbo to use, like right off the bat? Where do you start? Fuel mapping, everything. Like, how do you just slap this together and let's see what happens?
Well, the other day I was, sitting umming, and it just kind of appeared out of the light. No, for the turbo size, let's address that first. We actually changed it recently because we weren't happy with the turbo. But anyways, I actually have a program that I can run engine efficiency, engine sizes, RPMs, altitude, like a whole bunch of information, and it comes out and gives me a general airflow of the engine. And then there's data out on each turbo that we can go through and select the nearest matching turbo. The problem was the turbo we wanted didn't exist. And so when you wrote it, the turbo was larger than we wanted.
It's larger than any other turbo two-stroke on the market right now.
Yeah.
But it was the brand. I don't know if we're still not saying the brand, but the brand of the turbocharger that you're using was bigger, more airflow, but more efficient and quicker to spool. The most common.
It's funny. It's funny because turbo technology went like this and just flatlined, and these guys have found a new, basically, reinvented how it works.
They kind of work like we do. Look for, everybody's been doing it the same for years, so it works. But if we come at it at a different angle, can we improve it? And that's what they did. And the cool thing recently is we were able to get them to make a custom smaller turbo for us. So now we have a smaller turbo. That
7 millimeters. 7 millimeters smaller, which
is
significant on a...
It was about 15% smaller.
Which...
That's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Which, talking to the guys about it, it flows as much as the turbo that we're using, that you guys rode.
They've improved it even more.
So it's phenomenal.
So that improves what? Throttle response?
Yes. Bottom end, your initial get-go, it improved slightly. Where we noticed it the most in this last week is what I call your driving range. You're cruising along 15 to 30 miles an hour. You let out, kind of go around a creek, snap it again. Way more responsive. Like counting in seconds faster. So,
well, and that's huge because, all the old turbos that come out had that turbo lag. In fact, I even think Polaris still has some turbo lag.
Oh.
Versus the Ski-Doo. So, yeah, if you guys can be efficient, that 2,000 hours or whatever you said you put into it, or 200,000 hours cost you, in the long run, that's going to pay off.
Yeah.
I think, if you can
that's
be
where
reliable.
that's where the marketing side comes in. It really is a phenomenal turbo, and I think I told you guys the story. I argued with a guy for a year, a guy that used to work at Bully Dog, that there was no way you could build a better turbo than what Garrett or Borg Warner or any of those guys had built. And he called me one day and he said, I paid $2,000 for this turbo to try it out on the 800, in fact. And what we noticed is over top of the Garrett, we had two identical sleds, and what we noticed is we had we had 3 pounds of boost at 4,800 RPM, and the Garrett had a half a pound of boost, and we were running a bigger turbo than what the Garrett was. Basically, the equivalent side. So most people run what they call a 2860 on them, and we were running basically a 2967 on it, which is what was on the 600, and now we're running. I don't know what the size.
943 basically.
Yeah. So
no, that's not right.
No, because it's the X-Deucer of the
Yeah.
thing, but it made it. It was a bigger turbo and still spooled faster than the smaller turbo, and so. That guy called me and he said, I guess you owe me an apology. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, it really changed the course of the whole turbo side of stuff. And of course, you're dealing in the UTV market. Snowmobiles, they're pretty much on their own island for spooling a turbo. Like you can't have two-step or going around a tree. You can't have something that's going to make it. So turbo efficiency, system efficiency, and quick spool is just like nothing else. Like, you go in the automotive world, and yeah, they're trying to make them spool faster. But if they don't spool faster, it's not like it's a get stuck and have to flip it around type deal like it is on snowmobiles. It's so, a lot of customers will ask, is there a point in doing a smaller turbo or one that spools quicker? In the snowmobile market, spool is everything. Which is why the superchargers were so effective, because they're a right now supercharger. But this turbo has completely changed the whole dynamic of the way that works.
Yeah, because there's an upside to a supercharger, but man, they're hard to ride because the bottom end is so strong. Like you used to ride Rob and Dave's, and you've been on them. They run phenomenal, but you got to be really strong for that bottom end, because it's driving off the shaft rather than gradually building up.
Yep.
And it's just such a hard pull. So you're kind of bridging that gap of picking up the benefits of a supercharger system versus a turbocharger, but maintaining the rideability. And then because this turbo system is on a catalyst, I think it's one of the easier platforms to ride. And you didn't gain any weight, right?
Nope. We are anywhere from the same weight to 5 pounds, maybe even 10 pounds lighter if we can do it. We're still swapping some parts out. We were doing complete carbon fiber, so there was no aluminum in it. We have since changed that to an aluminum charge pipe due to installation. It's going to be a lot easier doing it with aluminum pipe, but the carbon fiber, it's obviously carbon fiber is just cool. So and it's light. So we were able to utilize that in our the intake side of our turbo. So
talk about with the Arctic Cat being like a laydown engine and nose cone intake versus behind the motor. Like, how does this go from an engineering standpoint? Is it easier to build a turbo system for that setup for the Arctic Cat versus a Polaris or Skidoo? Do you have more room to work with? Like, what's the benefits?
There is a certain amount of space that's easier, but then with the Catalyst chassis and it's trying to keep everything compact, there's the nose cone especially was really tight to get around the steering column, because they were wonderful and got rid of all of their linkage and malarkey that they had on the old chassis, and it's a straight shot steering column, but it goes right in front of the throttle body. So that part was pretty tight, but being able to, because that everything's in the front, we were able to drop the turbo, which in that picture you could see we're really, really low, and we could have a straight shot. There's no elbows, no angles or anything. It's straight shot to the airbox, and the airbox contains all of the directional changes needed, which is brilliant from an engineering standpoint, because whenever you can slow the air down for the corners, you get a lot more efficient airflow. So in the long run, the package is way nicer to work with.
So talk about the turbo system for the Catalyst. Like, where are you pulling clean air from, and just talk about the whole system.
Yeah. Okay. So we can just start from the top there. So we are building a intake that uses the factory frog skins, I guess, for lack of a better term, so that you keep all your same airflow from the factory, which the Catalyst did a great job. There's a lot of airflow in that hood. But we can shorten it up and lose some weight there. We draw straight down from that hood intake, straight down to the turbo with a carbon fiber pipe. And then the turbo is vertically mounted like a Polaris. And we set it really low, utilizing stuttering here, an aluminum air muffler. So we're industry first aluminum muffler. We're using external wastegate, tile wastegate. Then coming off the turbo, straight shot to the airbox, which is, at this point, we are 3D printing that out of nylon 12, which is a very strong yet flexible plastic. So it can take,
Vibration.
a hit. It takes vibration really well. It's not brittle, yet it's still very strong material. We use this exact same stuff in the UTVs, and we've tested it to over 100 pounds of pressure. We run 60 pounds of boost on Can-Ams. No problems. The stuff doesn't blow apart. So it's well tested, not just on the snowmobile application. And then we brought back the, which all the factory's doing now too, but we had brought it back quite a few years ago, the low pressure bypass stuff that we had helped develop on another turbo kit. We brought that back it was actually originally developed by a guy Yamaha did it on an old street bike. I don't know if you knew that in the 80s. There was a turbo 600, I think they called it. It had a low pressure bypass.
That's where we learned.
That's where we learned about it. And then there was another company, and I can't remember the name of them, but they did it on an old 600 triple Polaris. I think it was an Ultra. And they had put it on their turbo kit back in the 90s, early 90s. So as the technology's been around for a long time, but nobody brought it back, and it just all kind of hit. We released it. Actually, the release of the kit that we were released happened after Ski-Doo, but we had already been working on it before the Ski-Doo Turbo came out, so we had no idea that Ski-Doo was doing it as well.
So talk about how it works. Like what mechanically what's happening.
So the concept is you put a turbo on there, and until that thing is doing anything, it's really kind of like putting a choke on there. Your engine can't breathe very well until the turbo's spinning. So the concept is you allow the engine to breathe fresh air somewhere else until the turbo gets lit. It does two things for you. One, your engine has more torque because it gets the air it wants. But because of that, because you introduced more air to the system, the turbo is just an air pump. And so you just put more exhaust pressure to the turbo, so it lights the turbo faster too. So it gives you almost a compounded effect of way more bottom end.
So kind of what you're talking about, Kerbs, it cleans up that the old school aftermarket turbo feel.
Yeah.
Of the bottom end sucks and the top end rips.
Yes.
Like that's why the Ski-Doo factory turbo runs so good.
Yes.
Because it's able to make that bottom end feel like a complete stock engine.
Yep.
And then like you're saying, it actually speeds up the process.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
One of the things that we might say about the Ski-Doo turbo system is it probably, contrary to popular belief, it probably has more lag than does the Polaris.
It does.
But their engine is so much torquier on the bottom that you don't notice that transition into the turbocharger, whereas you do with the Polaris, because they ended up using an engine that started with less torque.
They have a heavier crank. They have a heavier crank, which is why the 9R was such a new thing, because they lightened up the crank and everything. But between the 800 and the 850, the 800 actually lit turbos a lot better than the 850. But we've got a logging software that is phenomenal, and we've done logs back to back with the Ski-Doo and the Polaris. And the Polaris, it lights faster, but the Ski-Doo has so much more torque. And if you listen carefully, especially on the 180, the Gen 5s, if you listen carefully, you can hear the turbo come in on the Gen 5 just because it has to build more boost. But it's when they came out with it, it was phenomenal. But we noticed as soon as we started logging it, we're like, oh, it doesn't actually spool that fast. They just have, and of course their bypasses, and they have an exhaust bypass, an intake bypass, which makes the whole system work. We actually, from a clutching standpoint, we have a completely different profile that we run between the naturally aspirated and the turbos. It's not just a spring change. It's not just more weight. It's a completely different profile, which in the industry, we change it significantly. So, for instance, we run anywhere from 15 to 25% lighter than anybody else on the market. On the Pro R, for instance, getting into UTV stuff, we've just put a turbo on one. I'm running, on our dyno, it did 172 horse completely stock. It runs 114 gram weight as a heavy weight. but that motor is also a 2-liter motor and very torquey. I am now running about 310 horse, and I'm running 75 grams of weight with a shallower helix. When you run a shallower helix, you have to run more weight. So that just shows you the geometry side and what we do. So like I said, we run anywhere from 15 to 25% lighter, which obviously helps your bottom end. But on the Ski-Doo, we were able to throw our naturally aspirated profile in there, and because it has so much bottom end, it worked phenomenally. Whereas the Polaris, we did have to redesign and do more of what we did on the aftermarket 800 turbos, not quite load the motor as heavy and stuff and make it so that it was a lot more responsive, which I think you guys rode the Boost, didn't you? I think it had our stage 2 on it at that point, maybe stage 1.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, that thing
It was
ripped.
awesome.
That was a fun one.
Yeah, and after getting off the 600, you really seem to like that one. A little bit.
Somebody up there made the comment of like, this turbo 600 catalyst will run with the factory turbos. And I was like, not sure. It's kind of like that what Tim Robbins meme that's on TikTok. Are you sure about that? But then I got on your Polaris, and that thing was phenomenal. That was a rocket.
Yeah, it's our focus on the Polaris was definitely to get the bottom end a little bit more responsive, for sure. Yeah. And I wasn't too happy with my Polaris when I first got it, but after
Who is?
it,
I mean, sorry.
yeah,
kidding.
I put a Lynx track under it, and so that obviously gave it a little bit more grip on the bottom, and then the clutching and the tune. And I really, really enjoy it now, obviously.
With that Lynx track, though, did you lose, I don't know how to say it, like in soft snow, real soft snow, the ability to get up on top of it rather than cut through it?
There's a lot of people that have different opinions on that kind of stuff. Me personally, no, because I actually started moving forward rather than like that 275 track. I had 60 miles on it. I pulled it off, and I'm like, I will pay somebody $800 to take this thing away from me. When I put the Ski-Doo, at that point, it was still a 165 Ski-Doo, and I lost track speed for sure, but I gained ground speed, and it was hard that year because that was 22 when it just wasn't, 21, 22 season. Like the snow was just horrendous. So I have to be careful with the 275 track, but I've talked to a lot of people. There's a lot of guys that have swapped that track. Apparently the new, which you guys I think have probably ridden, that new 325 track I've heard is really good.
It's pretty amazing.
But I have a hard time getting over the all-aroundness of the Ski-Doo track and the Alpha track. I feel like for the right type of riding that we do, throughout the season, it works the best overall. I've heard that track works really good in the powder. Unfortunately, I didn't have any powder that year, so it was hard to do that. But I have heard that it's a good track in light powder, but that's an opinion.
I wondered if Williams should just go through point by point what advantages this turbocharger kit on the Catalyst has, and why people should be looking at this kit.
Yeah, because I'm curious about that too. Like I don't know, like list off half a dozen aftermarket turbo companies that we've dealt with since 2009, 10.
Yeah,
when they really started to explode.
Yeah,
and then everybody had to have an aftermarket turbo. What sets this kit apart? Like what you're saying, Michael?
Yeah, probably starting with the clutching is probably where you'd want to start.
Yeah, I mean the clutching's included in the kit, and as we've mentioned earlier in the show, that we take a different look at everything. And the clutching, as Alex mentioned, we develop a actual profile for the engine package, turbo package. So, I mean, last week when we were up in Grand Mesa, we went through 4 or 5 different profiles testing. And so we're not just building a turbo kit and then grabbing a set of stock weights or a set of magnet adjustable weights from company X and, all right, it's tacking, we're good. That's what everybody does. It's tacking RPM, we're good. Mm-hmm. You can actually gain track speed and not change your RPM. Something people don't understand. Quite a bit. I've seen as much as 10 mile an hour track speed gained and still tacking the same RPM. And that's down to the geometry of the weights and the geometry of the helix. And we call it our advanced profile technology, which is involved in both the weights and the helixes. Our helixes are completely unique. Nobody cuts helixes like we do. We actually had to spend quite a bit of time on the phone with the industry standard companies that make helixes and explain how we want it. And they kind of looked at me the first time, you what? That's not normal.
We call it, just for instance, we call it a wowie helix because it actually makes a W. We start shallow, we go steeper, we go back shallow. You know, there's a lot of companies out there that say we do our helixes completely different, and then you go and figure out that they've got a straight 46 instead of a straight 48. Ours are not like that. They are, ours, like you can physically look at them, and I mean, every single one of them is different per brand, per sled, per, you know, application, and some of them,
So is that built to follow the curve of each individual motor output?
Yes.
That's right.
Yep. So the power delivery of the motor, you know, where the torque is, where the weight of the chassis, you know, all of that stuff comes into play. The turbo, when it comes in, at what RPM, and everything when that comes in, and then the shape of the weights. Because when we change the shape of the weights, the torque coming off the weights is different, so you need to sense that torque change with the helix and make sure it matches. So from that standpoint, that's point number one, is that the clutching package is developed from the ground up for the turbo kit, not just bolt-on parts.
That's pretty cool.
That's kind of point number one. And then the next thing we like to do in developing kit is we like to be able to give the customer the ability to not have to cut anything. Now, that's not going to be a rule that you'll never have to cut something, but thankfully I think at this point the Catalyst, you don't have to cut anything. So you can put it back to stock if you wanted to. But that also makes installation easier. We focus on trying to make sure installation's as easy as humanly possible. Sometimes it's not easy, but it is the case. And we want the parts we use to be quality parts. So, you know, we're using carbon fiber where we can. Gives you first of all, it looks good, but second of all, it is functionally lighter and stronger than aluminum. We're using an oil system that we had developed a few years ago, where we supply a regulated amount of pressure to the turbo. We're the only ones doing that, and everyone else will just broadcast pressure to the turbo, or the old stuff, they used to bleed it back or have a pump and everything. It started getting really complicated, right? With the regulated system, we don't push oil past the seal, so our airbox doesn't get packed full of oil, which I'm sure if you've ever popped a turbo airbox apart, it's always loaded up with a bunch of oil. Well, that oil actually affects tuning. And how much is in there affects tuning, because it's a fuel, you know? Mm-hmm. So with the regulated return, we don't have this extra oil that can throw another kink, you know. Is it a big problem? No. But it's there, right? And attention to detail is what we're looking for. So this oil system makes sure there's oil to the turbo, but keeps it from getting into the intake and into the exhaust. As we mentioned earlier, we're using a very unique turbo in the industry. It is an American-made turbo, billet center section instead of cast. Very high-end German bearings that can take an incredible amount of RPM.
And I think it's safe to say it, not a Garrett, not a Borg Warner.
Yeah, not a Garrett, not a Borg Warner. It is. We're keeping the name off the air, but people will figure it out when they buy it.
Tell them about the exhaust, how the exhaust wheel works compared to a conventional turbo, so they understand why.
Yeah. Okay.
It's better.
Yeah. Okay. So from a airflow standpoint, their exhaust wheel is unique in that they took a different look at it. Everybody's turbo to date is developed to work off of pressure, because you can kind of picture that logically. You're trying to build pressure here, so you use pressure on the other side, and it generates power to turn the wheel. What they did is they took a look at it and said, well, you have the concept of speed carrying energy. So the air is flowing through there at a rapid speed, and you have inertia from that. And so they took a look at that and figured out how to utilize the velocity of the air instead of the pressure of the air. And it made for a pretty interesting concept. They now have taken what used to be high exhaust pressure to build it, and they can drop the exhaust pressure out, which makes the whole entire engine more efficient because it's not trying to push the air through the turbo anymore. It's just pushing like there's not even a turbo there, and the velocity of the air is doing all the work.
Which gives you more bottom end, even before the turbo's lit.
So is that through the wheel? Is that through the exhaust housing? Like,
It's the wheel shape. That's the main thing. I mean, their housing, it's a tile exhaust housing, which does flow better velocities, and it helps Garrett's out because it's a common, add-on or upgrade to a Garrett turbo. So it does, the tile housing is a piece of the puzzle, but the major part is the wheel design itself. And when you take one look at it, you go, whoa, because it looks very different.
It looks totally different. Cool.
yeah, that is cool. And I like what you're talking about with the clutching too, because most companies just get on there and their end goal in clutching is, like you say, peak RPM, wide open throttle. But you don't ride these things, like 10% of your riding is wide open throttle.
Yeah.
Most of the time is everywhere in between and in and out, and you want constant load. Like,
Yep.
you want load so power's going to the track, not spinning in the clutches.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, we've actually proved it quite a bit in the UTV world because they're easier to dyno, but I call it horsepower under the curve. And we have quite a few independent dyno companies now that have dynoed various of our clutch kits. And when they do it, every time they come back flabbergasted because our dyno charts get to peak horsepower very rapidly, and then they just hold flat and right until you're basically out of clutching, and then it's going to do what it does. Whereas almost all of our competitors look like a mountain. The power comes up, it peaks, and it comes back down. So it's exactly what you're talking about. You just full throttle. Yeah, sometimes, sometimes that little peak might be 5 horsepower more than we make at our peak. But ours is so flat, the area under the curve, it'll win in a drag race every single day. And then drivable, like I mentioned earlier, your driving range, that's where everybody is. Who cares if you made peak horsepower at 80 miles an hour? How often are you there?
Not on a mountain sled.
Just for a second before you lose the sled. Right, Bruce?
Yeah.
Before you ghost ride it.
It was running really strong right at the last second before I bailed. Let me tell you guys.
Oh, yeah, when your body's not on it, but you're just holding wide open, things rip.
Yeah.
What was that skidoo when I tipped it up backwards? You could zoom in and see my track speed. It was like, what was it, like 52 miles an hour or something like that? Standing straight up. Whoa.
Yeah. And what were you going to say, Michael?
Well, I was just going to say probably then there's other steps like having a straight shot at the getting rid of the elbows. How many feet does one elbow cost you in air reduction?
190 is equivalent of 10 extra feet of elbow, but there was another quantification that we had recently.
Yeah,
that
air velocity, once it goes over the speed of sound, it becomes,
it gets turbulent. So
when you
kind of like an
add-
airplane going through the speed of sound, it makes an explosive sound. If your air velocity exceeds the speed of sound, well, whenever you hit an elbow, it basically reduces the size of that pipe right there, because not all the air can make the turn at the same time. You got air hitting and turning and it coming backwards, and it's equivalence of reducing the size of the pipe. When you reduce the size of the pipe, that air still has to get to the engine. The engine still wants it. So you get a couple of things. Either you get a pressure spike at the turbo trying to push it through that hole, and you get an increase in velocity, and you start risking hitting the speed of sound, and then the whole thing gets crazy.
And your air gets hotter, which obviously isn't good. Right. So to put that into perspective, I talked to the engineer behind the Bully Dog side of stuff, my uncle, and he said they had a special ceramic coating that they did on the exhaust, and a 4-inch ceramic coated exhaust would run more horsepower than a 5-inch aluminized exhaust with no ceramic coating. And that really, we took that information and really tried to keep it, because what happens is, he said what happens is ceramic coating keeps the heat in the pipe, and he said what happens is you've got a thin layer inside the pipe where the exhaust, and it's moving at a very slow speed, and then you've got your exhaust that's going out that's moving at a high speed, and the aluminized one obviously would create a bigger pocket. And so what happens is it actually made the exhaust smaller. And so when William and I started looking at this and seeing the straight shot, and we were able to drop the turbo to keep in line with what the catalyst, low center of gravity, which or low center of mass, which I would have argued till I was blue in the face 2 years ago that didn't matter. But the Catalyst obviously shows that compared to the old Ascender chassis. We tried to maximize the pipe size with not actually internally making it any bigger, right? So with a straight shot, you've got none of the air trying to turn, and therefore your pipe gets smaller. It starts to speed up the air, and you can exceed the speed of sound, which obviously, I mean, you're not going to hear it, but it's in there. It's making a lot of noise, and it affects your airflow, your engine efficiency, and all that. So that was one thing we did that was probably our biggest, trying to figure out how to get a straight shot to that and to the air box so that we could get it through the engine.
Are you cooling the charge air?
No. Adds weight.
Yeah.
One of the things that I can't remember if it was Justin or you, Ryan, when you guys stepped off of that sled, we asked you, like, what did you think? And one of the first things that I remember you guys saying was, I've never ridden a turbo that didn't feel like it had a turbo under the hood. Weight-wise,
yeah.
That the nimbleness of the sled was still there. That was by design.
Yeah, I didn't notice it at all. So I mean, it was very, there's very little there to notice. I think where you have it positioned, the way that you've done it, and I guess like you said, you're keeping the weight the same, right? Or similar to, or less, and so I don't know.
We're keeping it the same and in the same spot, which is
Actually,
a lot of the secret.
Actually lower.
Because the thing, I think Ryan said it, that when you got, when you went from, especially the 9R, which is lighter, but they did add weight, obviously, with the muffler and all that stuff. But the turbo being so high on the Ski-Doo and the Polaris, it gets a little bit top heavy. And that, I think, is the next feat. And so what we tried to do was keep it as low as possible, which it has its own challenges. But, when you guys came back and said it doesn't feel like it has the turbo weight, which was interesting because we had Riley's sled turboed before we had ours, and we went up and were tuning Riley's before Jackson, and I felt like it handled a little bit better, but I wasn't sure if it was just in my head or if it was, and so when you guys said that, I'm like, okay, it actually does help with the handling side of stuff and definitely didn't hinder it at all.
Well, yeah, because any mass that's down there next to, like, where your turbo is mounted, down really low next to the, mag side of the motor, next to the crankshaft, basically.
Yep.
Low in the chassis, center to the center line of the sled. As you're side heeling and flipping back and forth and jumping off and doing hop overs and everything, that mass is not moving very far distance wise. But if you take that and you move it up 10 inches and out 3 inches, now that arc, like that weight, is actually moving around your center line of mass.
Yeah, and
you feel it.
It's like putting a 45-pound plate with a bar on it in the center or at the bottom. Which one's going to have less effect, right? And that, I think the supercharger that they had, that was the thing that they did a couple years ago, is they reduced, they were actually able to lower it, and it apparently made the gyro effect a lot less and stuff. And so that all comes into play, right?
Yeah, because like for us, I don't know what you guys think, but like for a Ski-Doo factory turbo, it feels heavier, but it doesn't feel unbalanced. It feels the same balance because it's centered, but it's in the top, so it is heavier. It does have a heavier feel. A Patriot Boost feels unbalanced and heavier because it's kind of out here to the side.
Yep.
So if you're cutting in on the left-hand side, you're lifting that weight into the snow. And then when you're dropping, that side drops more rapidly, and then it drops back on the left side.
Yeah.
And then on this Catalyst, everything is so low, and you're replacing what was already there, and kind of a net zero weight gain, weight loss.
Yep.
And it really didn't feel different.
That's impressive.
It was a lot more power.
Yeah, with a lot more power, yeah.
So, might want to talk about the tuning now. I haven't really said anything about the tuning, but that is a really strong suit of Ibex's.
Yeah, so are you doing the tuning?
Both of us are, yeah. So that is, something unique to us, is that we have, we'll start with the customer's facing side. We have a device that the customer can receive that comes with the kit that they can flash it with there, so they don't have to send their ECU in to us to get it flashed, or it doesn't have to go to a specific dealer to get it flashed. They have access to that. It is all cloud-based. It has the ability to log, so they can do logs and send it to us if there's something they want changed. It uploads automatically. They connect to Wi-Fi. There's an upload button. It puts it right on our servers so that we can take a look at what's going on. We can change their tuning, and they just connect to Wi-Fi and download. Cool thing is they only need to connect to Wi-Fi to get a new tune. Once they get the new tune, it's on the device, so they don't have to have Wi-Fi to flash, which is also a problem in some of the other devices that are out there. So it's not going to be a big deal on the Catalyst because you can't change boost with it. We use it a lot, the boost and the Ski-Doo Turbo, like on the hill, you can change, from stage 1, 2, or 3 if you wanted to. So it gives you the ability to try different tunes. If we sometimes on prototype stuff, we're like, all right, we'll send you 3 different tunes. Tell us which one you like best and what you don't like about the other ones, type thing. So that device is really cool. We obviously have a lot of years of tuning experience coming from Bully Dog. I mean, I've been doing tuning for over 20 years.
Tell them about the excursion you did with Dad.
Oh yeah, that was
at a stoplight.
That was kind of fun. Back in the old 7.3 days, you could have actually live tuning, kind of like standalone ECUs. And I was looking through this map, and I'm like, I wonder what this does. And I started turning it up. It was a throttle control map.
Like while you're out driving?
Yeah, we're sitting at a stoplight in California.
Was it responsive?
It started taking off.
Yeah, he had his foot on the brake and it was still going. And you were, 14 years old?
Probably.
And not scared of anything. So it was just like, here we go.
Was that one of those backhand the head moments?
Stop.
Put it back, was that? It's still going to take off.
No, we have a lot of years of experience tuning lots and lots of different industries between diesels, 4-strokes, 2-strokes, done a lot of it. Because that's the hardest part of tuning, is understanding each unique brand's ECU, because they don't all work exactly the same. I mean, the concept's there, the job of figuring out how much air's there and giving it enough fuel is all the same, but the way of going about it is all different. And
and anybody that has a performance system and tells me that they've remapped from the ground up, that scares the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Because you have
what did you miss?
Well, you have decades of R&D testing, on-site testing. I mean, these OEs go out and they travel the whole country and they hit every 200 feet elevation and they validate the entire fuel map. And they make all these increments at just small, and so they're covering sea level to 13,000 feet, making sure that motor can operate in any scenario. I don't want you to delete that and start over on what you did in your backyard.
That's called working hard, not smart.
Yeah.
We try to take what they've done and just add to it, right?
One of the things that maybe you should speak to about tuning too is if anyone has a turbocharger kit that is not an Ibex turbocharger kit. Have you ever helped any of those people out with their kit?
Yeah, two different major brands we've retuned quite a bit to help.
Just on the sled side, or
Just on the sled side, yeah. Obviously, the factory turbos on Polaris and on Ski-Doo have kind of died, but the have made the aftermarket turbo world die. But on the Arctic Cat stuff, you got a couple of different companies that do it. We have retuned, I would say upwards of 30 or 40 of those now. And the cool thing is like with the cloud-based stuff is I got a lot of calls at the beginning, and a lot of guys come out west now. I mean, mountain sleds are way more prominent than they used to be. They're getting more and more, right? So a lot of people are coming from back east out here. And the cool thing is with our kit is once, if you get it through a dealer and you buy it through a dealer, once they've installed it, it never has to go back, really. The tuning, the clutching, everything is directly held, through us. So the dealer doesn't have to deal with that kind of stuff. And when a lot of guys from back east, they would send their hey, we got a new tune. They send their ECU off, they get it flashed, they bring it back, they leave for a 2-week trip. And
But then they got to redo it.
It didn't work. For instance, it runs worse than it did last year on their new tune. Well, we have the ability, obviously, with that, once they get back to the loft or wherever they're staying, they can connect to Wi-Fi. They can go back to the old tune. Yeah, maybe it doesn't work as good as flawless, but they can ride around it. They've learned how to ride it for a year. So I've heard of a lot of companies ruining a their out west trip, if you will. And so that's something that we thought about when we were developing this tuner is like, we want to be able for people to flash without having to send their ECU in or, having a plug-in box that manipulates or
And most of the time,
catches
they already
it.
have the tune on the box, right? So if they're on the mountain, they could go
Yeah.
back to last year's tune, right?
Yeah,
then
so
there.
we give three different tunes, kind of tune 1, tune 2, tune 3, and with the not being able to have years and years and years of development on it, we're able to kind of say, this one's a little bit different than this one. Try them all and see which one works best, and then the one that works best is the one that we tell everybody to download first, and then if they need to, they can do the others. We haven't really run into that problem, but we're able to do that. And our device can hold, 20,000 tunes if we really wanted to. But, it gives the ability to be able to flash on the mountain if you need to. I've turned my Polaris up a few times to shut some Skeeto boys up. Then they go and turn theirs up, and it just becomes a whole different ball game.
Funny.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh,
Sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
no, I wanted to go back because we kind of skimmed over it. You referenced the lack of cooling the air, and Alex mentioned it's heavy, which is accurate. So we basically looked at it and tried to balance a couple of things, which this kind of went back and forth with a couple of the race guys because obviously they're used to running an intercooler. And there's two things. One is trying to balance the weight versus the power gain. Is it worth it? Okay. Well, everyone else is using let's use Garrett as the example because that's pretty much everybody's, not everyone, but almost everyone's using a Garrett Turbo. Well, the Garrett Turbo, on average, depending on which version you use, range from 60 to about a really good one's at 75% efficient. That means at 60%, 35% of your, or 40% of your energy being generated by the turbo is turning to heat. That's what that means. That number means. So that's a lot of heat being generated on a low efficient. And at 75, you're still got 25% of it. This turbo we're using, that intake wheel will tap 89% efficient. So we can build boost with a lot less heat. So that was the first thing that we looked at. And because of that ability to actually generate less heat, we are able to get away with not running an intercooler. Is it hotter than an intercooled air? Yes, but the difference isn't worth the weight loss, if that makes sense. We've looked at it possibly someday if it became a big deal, we would introduce an intercooled version for some racers, but I can say through the words of one of the racers who went and turned his up, still safe intake temps, he said it was too damn fast. So
and we logged it up Jackson on one of the hills, and he had his set at 9 pounds of boost, and he ran an average of 6.8 up and that's the beautiful thing of the logging software. We just turned it on, he put it in his goggle bag in there and went up the hill, and he wanted to know basically what his intake air temperatures were getting to because he was scared that they were getting too hot. Well, Jackson is a long pole, and he averaged about 6.8 pounds of boost throughout the time that I saw his track move to a stop basically at the top. And the intake air temperatures were 125 degrees. So not really hot. We start to worry about them about 150 degrees is getting up there. I mean, on a UTV, we'll run them up. I mean, they run hot because they're running a lot more boost through a less efficient system. But that was one thing we did look at because the race team raised the question of, we've always run intercoolers. So.
Yeah, and I asked the question because just for your everyday guy that's riding it, an intercooler only works if there's ground speed, if there's airflow over it. And for us slow guys, it's just added weight and it's not really doing anything. So if the turbo system is efficient enough to maintain its own temperatures within that the correct range, I'd rather not have one because it's just dead weight to me.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you guys are slow, what does that make us?
caterpillars?
I mean, the sled's more capable. It's got a lot of power. It's capable, but the rider, I mean, when we were up with you guys, you were launching that catalyst. Kind of had to pry your fingers off of it a little bit.
Yeah, it was a fun one.
It was fun.
It was a fun sled.
It
It just goes back to what we were saying at the beginning. Like, it's such a fun sled on its own. Like, Cat has just,
Yeah.
they've really done a good job. Like, they baked that cake for a long time, but it came out.
I'll still
really
stand
good.
by it this year that it'll beat a factory turbo on 9 pounds.
You're 600.
It'll outclimb it. Now in a drag race, we're my
we don't
guys.
worry about
We
that.
Don't worry about that. But I bet it'll outclimb.
Soft, deep snow, straight up. I don't think you'll beat it.
You won't beat it. We actually have a video of it racing a lynx that you might not
So-
see.
Well, I'm gonna say you probably have not ridden a Chaos Boost with the 325 track.
Yeah, but see, that's cheating. Oh, no, it's not. No, it's not. I still stand by it. A 3-inch Alpha track, though, they go through the snow pretty good.
That they do, but it's pushing an Alpha.
What's wrong with pushing an Alpha?
It's heavy.
Well, not the catalyst, though.
Well, not the catalyst. So yeah, a 3-inch
Yeah.
3-inch Alpha track on a catalyst would be pretty efficient setup.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
That will. So
We'll
let's
get you.
do
We'll
that.
get you. Yeah.
We'll get you your shot.
This is the next article, right?
We're taking his 6-liter, by the way.
This is our next
gone.
We go riding this thing.
Yeah. So we got to set that up. We got to.
We should build one of them.
We got to like have a bet right before we go up, and then just for fun of it.
So Catalyst 600 Alpha 3-inch with your turbo kit versus a Chaos 325
Boost.
Chaos Boost. And then we'll throw.
That's
in-
not fair. I haven't ridden one of those.
So then once it gets its butt whooped, we'll put a clutch kit and tune on it and go watch
On
it
the
start
boot.
beating back up on the catalyst.
He's not believing us. I don't think he's believing us.
So we haven't talked about this. What's your price point? Like, is it doable? Is it, how does this work? You know what I mean? Is it,
Snow check was $54.99. Retail will be $59.99.
it's not terrible then.
No, it'll put you right
And
around.
that comes with your clutch kit and everything.
Yeah, full ready to go, fuel mapping, clutch kit, all the installation stuff. And so that puts you, if you buy the sled, buy the turbo kit, you're just below what a new boost and
Yeah, I was going to say that
I think.
the Catalyst is fairly cheap,
14,
Yeah, it's
13.
15, 16.
Yeah.
But the new, I don't know what the 24 boost is. I think it's 20. Is it 20?
It's going to be close to 23.
Yeah. So it'll be
22.8.
relatively the same price. It's going to hold a candlestick to it for sure. So,
I got the side eye there.
It's the whole package is phenomenal. I mean, and we've ridden, that new 325 track. I'm excited to get on one of those. But what we've noticed with the testing we've done with the Alpha track, is they do go through the snow amazing. Then you're obviously, I mean, when we weighed it, it was about 46 pounds lighter than a boost with a titanium can on it. So
on the boost.
on the
Titanium
boost,
can
yeah.
on the boost.
So you're 20 pounds lighter than an NA Polaris.
No, it was 20 pounds heavier on our scales. It was 544, and the 3-inch Alpha with the turbo kit on it was 504. So
Okay.
sorry, but
Yeah.
yeah, when you guys did it, your numbers were obviously different, which scales, but I had a Gen 5 free ride with the titanium can on it, and it weighed 537. So, I mean, those are obviously, it was 155, which I think you guys did. Which that 9R was 520, I want to say.
Our 9R was 507.
Oh,
That's right, yeah.
yeah. So,
What 9R 155, 175.
yeah, so that is saying my boost
275, sorry.
did have a Lynx track on it, which is a lot heavier. So, maybe it balanced
And
out.
it's
but-
an E-start.
Oh, yeah. But it had a
That's
lightweight
25
battery.
pounds. Yeah.
Had a lightweight
A
battery.
lot of little things that are big numbers.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The E-start is surprisingly heavy. That's where the shot start is.
Yep.
Such a phenomenal feat that they did. So, but yeah, it's we'll see. We'll get with you in November. Don't worry.
No, game
It'll be
on.
fun.
It'll be fun.
I'm not taking the position of I'm trying to prove you wrong. I'm just, I want to see this happen.
No,
because
and-
I've ridden the
all of us
325
do,
Chaos
yeah. No,
Patriot
we-
Boost, and that track, I would say on an NA, that track makes up for a track length So you can do things on 155, 325 that you would have to have a 165, 275 to do.
So in saying that, when I said that, I didn't. I haven't ridden a 325. So I was talking about the old I guess the 23 factory versus 24. So I get it, but I still.
Well,
I'll still take that bet.
This will be fun.
I think it'll be
This'll
fun.
They got to have equal weight riders, and I mean, you might as well. I mean, we might as well just make the bet because it's just gonna. I just feel bad that you're gonna be looking at my tail lights. That's all. You know?
Oh, I love it.
Ryan
yeah.
just has to figure out how to keep the skis on the ground. That was the only problem last year. So
Oh yeah, No, we were doing side by side launches, uphill dead start launches in our deep powder challenge. And what were you on? Expert?
I think so.
And I
Yeah.
was on the 9R.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're like almost touching side panels because we're doing it over and over. Because you have to do several and then kind of get the average. You can't just do it once. It's that's how it is.
Yep.
And that 9R just stood up and then it leaned over onto him.
No. Now, there's more than one way to
I
win.
should have just kept, I should have stayed in the throttle. I shouldn't have backed out.
Yeah, I don't know what you quit for.
I'm like wrecking prototype sleds. I think I'd already wrecked one sled. So
You're
This year, I
one
don't wanna
wreck
do it.
season
Yeah,
kind
yeah, I
of guy.
got-
Got you.
Yeah. So where can guys get this kit? Like, so is Nethercott installing this in his shop?
He can, yeah. He's obviously been with the race team for quite a while, so he was a big part with Riley doing it, and then Dave McClure. Basically, Dave told me that he would not be on board unless Jason was on board, and Jason wrote it and saw the development of it. Basically, since February, he wasn't really involved with it before that, and he told Dave that. He said, even with the way that it is now, it's still more rideable than a lot of other aftermarket.
Yeah,
turbos.
I talked to Jason after we rode in Island Park on our March ride.
Oh, okay.
And had a conversation with him about that, and it's the same thing. And the one thing about Arctic Cat riders is they're very loyal and they know, and so there's guys in the Midwest that are having Jason Nethercott build their sleds.
Yes.
Just because as Nethercott goes, so goes Arctic Cat.
Yep.
Basically. Like if this guy builds your sled and this guy endorses your product, that's where you need to be. That's where the money goes.
Yep.
So having him down on that side of the fence with you guys as a dealer, kind of on the race side, helping Riley running this product, that's a big statement.
Well, and he was, I would say he was a big part of the very end development of it, getting the inside of the experience that he's had for obviously years of stuff. So when he got behind it, it even gave us instilled confidence that we were headed in the right direction with it.
Yeah.
So it obviously from both standpoints, we've got local customers that had 4 superchargers that he did all the work on them. So we're excited to have him on board too.
And you got Todd Tupper,
Yep.
who works for Arctic Cat. He's a mountain R&D engineer. He's with you on this. Like he's been pushing this from day one, right? Like he's one of the main reasons why this project came to be.
Yeah. He's been very on board. He saw the capabilities of what we were able to do on the big bore side of stuff, and wanted to have us build a turbo kit for it, knowing the turbo knowledge that we've got throughout the years of Bully Dog and the tuning, and obviously our clutching is completely different. So he was he's a big reason why we were able to develop.
Yeah. So it seems like you've got kind of the heavy hitters on the Cat side back in this.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah.
My last ride in Island Park, what was that sled that guy brought up there?
It was a 17 Mountain Cat
with a
aftermarket turbo kit on it.
turbo kit on it on 7 pounds.
On 7 pounds, and he said that thing ran real good. I probably have the video of it too, but oh man, he got off that thing. He could not believe it. It was probably 4 links that the 600 beat that sled in 500 feet.
Oh man.
Our goal was when we started developing clutching with the turbo side of the world was bottom end. I mean, everybody, turbo lag, which is, I hate turbo lag.
Yeah, I'd rather ride a stock sled
Yep.
than an aftermarket turbo, even if it had 100 extra horse. I'd rather ride a stock sled if the bottom end
Yeah.
hinders my ride, because that's where getting places happens, is all bottom end.
The power under the curve is where your rideability is. That was the biggest thing. And we actually worked with a turbo manufacturer, and they wanted us to clutch it. And so I took a set of conventional clutching and I gave it to them. So we were on the same kit, and just to show them the difference in what we did with our clutching. A lot of guys think that the turbo kit's way efficient and everything. It's the whole package together, and that was the idea behind the Catalyst kit was, the turbo that we use, the clutching that we use, the tuning that we do, the straight pipes that we do, all that stuff. It all comes full circle. It's a system efficiency, not just one efficient, two efficient, right?
So all the way to the tracks.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So are you taking pre-orders on this yet? I'm looking at your website right now.
Yep.
This is on the website?
Yep. And we run our snow check program longer than OEMs do. I think we're still kind of in a summer thing. We've got, quite a few people that are excited, and we haven't debuted it very heavily, just because we're kind of keeping a lot of stuff under wraps. But, with this and the pictures and stuff that we're releasing, and then obviously we just made a turbo change, which was specifically designed for a 600. So that's going to make a huge difference on the spool side of stuff.
So $500 deposit, get your name on one of these. Are you going to be able to build enough kits, mass produce enough kits to match
Yeah.
every Arctic Cat Catalyst that
That's the goal.
ordered?
Yeah. Every single one.
Wouldn't that be cool to sell one for every M600 that went out?
Yep.
That would be a dream come true.
All right, cool. Looks like you can go to Ibexx.com, IBEXX.com, go to Arctic Cat Turbos, and then you'll find the Arctic Cat Catalyst Turbo Kit and learn more information about that. Anything else we need to add to that? Any other comments you guys had from?
I got a question. You maybe not can answer it, but when the so-called, if Cat does come out with a bigger motor, you guys are going to roll into that too?
Plan on it.
That's the idea. Whenever they release it, we'll release a turbo kit for it.
Cool.
You have to have a turbo. It doesn't matter how big your motor
Yeah,
is.
because that's one thing they've told us. They've confirmed that they'll have a bigger motor, bigger than an 800, but not a turbo,
Yeah.
not a factory turbo.
Right.
So we need one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll give them a factory turbo.
Perfect.
All right. So we've got Alex, William, Michael Clausen from Ibex. Thanks for coming in. A lot of good info here. Appreciate you guys kind of spilling the beans on this. Feel like we talked about some good insider tech on this. Justin Stevens, Bruce Kerbs from SnoWest crew. Appreciate you coming in.
Yep.
We'll get this thing turned out, and hopefully it snows pretty soon.
And thank you very much
Yes.
for your support. SnoWest has been a very good support to me all the way through all our businesses.
It's
Appreciate it.
Partnerships, man. It's always fun. All right. Thanks for coming in, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.